Why are you?
What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? No! Oh, God!
What, man? Come on, I could...
Growая видеокарта с 11990 рублей.
Yeah, this game is kinda fun. Sons of the Forest is the second game in the Forest franchise, if you couldn't really tell by the very subtle hints in the title already. It released recently on the 24th of February on Steam and was in fact so successful and critically acclaimed, it not only cured cancer and solved world hunger, it also broke the actual site on which it initially released for a solid couple of hours, until Valve generously fixed it after you bought the newest Steam Deck. But after the agonizing 2-hour wait, I was finally, at long last, enlightened. I, unfortunately, have bad news, my dear viewer. I lied. That whole cool-ass edit at the beginning, lie. The perfect, overwhelmingly positive score on Steam, lie. The thumbnail and the title of the video? Lie, I mean, kind of. Not really, but for the sake of continuity, lie. The only truth that I've told so far is the fact that this video is indeed about men with axe in a highly tree-dense area, the second. But this game is in fact far from perfect, and isn't the legendary savior of a game that mere seconds of gameplay would banish the oldest IGN reviewer to the deepest pits of hell. But before you all strike me down by smashing that dislike button and posting a passive-aggressive comment down below, let me make my case. Games don't really have to be good to be just fun. And I think this one is a prime example of that very rule. Let me paint you a picture. The year was 2011, we've just discovered fire by banging 2 iPhones together, Valve still released games, and the attention span of an average human was at an all-time high of 5 seconds, as TikTok and Family Guy were not yet invented. Enter Ben Falcone, who, for the sake of convenience, I will call Mr. Knight, a Canadian who worked in the film and animation industry and, long story short, worked on one too many Marvel films and got fed up with all the cheesy one-liners. He then decided to start a game company with his one other friend in pursuit of his one real dream: making and developing a mobile game. Although now that I think about it, me being a YouTuber is way worse. But I digress. Not long after, they started their work on their now second project, The Forest. The rest is pretty much history. Honing their industry skills, they were able to develop and publish the game all by themselves, with only a small team that expanded to about 4 people, and finally released it in May of 2014 to the whole world. The game did pretty good. Some people loved it, others not so much. But there was something that both camps could easily agree on. The game was messy, but I saw that slop and I ate it up like a good little piggy. Although calling this game slop is a bit harsh, the game was very much so impressive and looked incredibly good for an indie project of this size and magnitude at the time. But we all pretty much know what that means. It's sequel time. It's sequel time.
Yes! Yes!
Fast forward to 2023 and now a second The Forest game has become a reality. Getting to the juicy stuff, this game is, as stated before, a pretty fun ride, although a bumpy one at that, and so there is some good and some bad. Starting with the goods. Building was my favorite aspect of the game by far. You can also easily decode that it was probably a thing that the developers themselves were relatively proud of, judging by the trailers. I really just love how you have to build your base step by step and you see every part of the process yourself. And even for those who don't appreciate it so much, you still have the option of making those goofy white thingamajigs and just filling it up until it's done. But honestly, where's the fun in that? If I want my goddamn house to be an all-around hazard in the surrounding area, goddamn darn it, I'm gonna bloody do it! Although, I do have an itsy-bitsy problem with the concept of building your base in general. Why? This is the question I thought the game was constantly putting in front of me because of the way it's constructed. First, the progression. In this game, you are immediately presented with an objective. Your squad is gone, you had no one to tune CSGO with, but hold on just a second. The phone be good. It displays the location of all your party members you so desperately need right now, as well as marks some of the cave entrances. This might seem well and all, right? I mean, you at least have an objective. Wrong! This still is an improvement to the first game, as there was only really an objective of finding your horrifically disfigured son you have no real attachment to. Although that was intentional by the developers. But come on, the game doesn't really give you any, literally any benefits for building a base, apart from, I don't know, saving the game. This isn't even a joke, this game has an even bigger problem with that than the first one. You can just play through the whole game without laying down a single goddamn log. And because of it, the game's design itself pushes you towards a playstyle where you will never utilize its most polished mechanic. And I'm looking at you, Tarp. You do not help a single bloody bit. Basically, this item is your portable base at demand. No resources needed, except only a single stick. Yes, that's right, only one small piece of wood is needed to set this bad boy up and sleep soundly to your heart's delight. At a small price of $5.99, you can also get your hands on this exquisite item that is every adventurous must have. Second, storage. You can build storage for practically every type of item category. Food, drying racks, grenades, C4 and other explosives, sure. Dried human skin and cooked severed heads, no problem. You might now be thinking, well, this sure sounds nice and dandy, what's so wrong with storage then? And again, nothing much, but the fact that the game itself asks you once again, why? Just like before, the game cuts over itself on this one. Why the hell would I need any goddamn storage if my character can carry a whole goddamn supermarket on him? Well, this is a survival game, that would mean that there are limited resources, and even if I find some Cheerios and meat slop, I'm eventually gonna run out. And so I'd need to develop a more reliable source of nutrition by hunting fish and animals, right? No. For some ungodly reason, the developers put in a mechanic that respawns every f***ing item on the whole planet after you reload the save, so the survival part is just pointless. Let's now discuss the topic of crafting. This one also falls into the goods category, and I can safely say that this is just well done. This is one of those few things that feel special because, well, no other game does it like this one. Just like making structures, you can see everything being made in real time by yourself, and the animations that go in par with it are delightfully satisfying to say the least. Of course, there are some rotten eggs here and there, like the timed bombs, but honestly that's pretty much it. The crafting recipes themselves are also pretty much good as they are. They aren't any crazy expensive stuff, that makes no sense, but there also aren't any piss-easy ones. The only one I'd see someone complain about would be all the health and energy mixes, made from combining different types of herbs. The only difficulty in that being that you need to know in which parts of the island some of them grow on. But mixes are such a nuance altogether, because they aren't really that strong and are mostly situational when you just so happen to have all the ones you need on yourself. As for the weapons, you have quite the plethora of armaments at your disposal to end the existence of those unfortunate enough to come across your way. This includes hatchets, axes, spears, clubs, torches, shovels, katanas, chainsaws, more axes, guitars, machetes, crosses, stun batons, and a goddamn putter? And I didn't even mention any ranged weapons yet. What I'm trying to say is, there is a lot, really, a shit ton of ways to kill in this game, with some more ridiculous than others, but that's really the beauty of these games at its finest. Just killing some cannibals and mutants in the dumbest way imaginable, and trying to survive. Now for those ranged ones, what makes them even talk-worthy is the fact that there weren't really any of them in the first game, apart from the bow and the flare gun, and what's most important, there weren't really any firearms due to the disruption in balance that would arise if they would be introduced to the first game without any major changes to its whole as it was. This in turn led the whole concept to be transferred more accordingly to a game that was supposed to include those from the very beginning. And just like that, we have a total of 8 ranged weapons, of which 3 could be classified as firearms. Just like in the first game, we have the bow with its 2 variations, as well as the crossbow and a slingshot, but also the brand new stun gun, which is just the stun baton but ranged. And the long-awaited firearms. Those consist of the shotgun, the pistol, and the revolver. The shotgun, big damage, slow fire rate, close to medium range, and 2 types of ammunition for bigger and smaller foes. Pistol, small damage, high fire rate, medium to high range, and an overall broad range of functionality. Revolver, aka the better pistol. Basically everything here is pretty much the same as in the pistol's case, with one major difference being the damage output increased tenfold, and to rub salt to injury, the revolver and the pistol share the same ammunition type, meaning that, when acquired, the pistol's role becomes obsolete. The developers have also blessed us with gun modifications. Although there is only 3 of them, they do their job of being a quirky little addition. However, this wasn't always the case, as just a couple of updates ago, we were saved from this abomination. And this is only one of many oversights in this already mediocre combat system. But let's be honest, what did you expect? It does its job, and most importantly, it's just blatant fun, even if it's just mashing the left mouse button. But one thing you did add to the combat is how enemies interact with things you attack them with. For example, in melee combat, if you hit them enough times, they are likely to fall over. Or if you happen to have a sharp weapon, you will most surely cut off a limb or 2. Same goes for firearms. If you hit them with a shotgun in the middle of the chest, they're not gonna just stand there and take it like a champ, but instead will instantaneously develop the ability of flight. However, focusing directly on the combat, there really isn't that much to speak of. It mostly consists of the previously mentioned mouse 1 mashing, with a rare addition of the block and the heavy attack. The armor system from the previous game was transferred here with little to no changes to it. It still has 10 slots, the leaf armor is still the worst, and the creepy armor is even stronger as there are just more mutants to go around. Nevertheless, there are some additions, like the tech armor, which technically beats the creepy one, even if its obtainability is much more resource heavy, as well as the strength stat, which increases players' maximum health when leveled up. The simplest way of doing so is just swinging any weapon as much as you can, with an important detail being that the type of weapon makes no difference. What counts are the number of swings, and so logically the best weapon to do this with is the knife. But just before you go swinging around like a maniac, let it be known that the effects are really hard to notice. Now this is cool and all, but what's there to shoot? Well, except little woodland critters, there are of course the iconic cannibals. You got them stinky ones, the normal ones, leaders, and so on, with many variations that come with. But the real main course are of course the mutants. And I have to say, as good as the mutants in the first game were, these are just better in every way. Starting with the most common dweller of the caves, blind mutants, usually occupying the more open areas of the underground, already stand much higher than your standard cannibal. This doesn't necessarily mean that they aren't quick on their horribly disfigured feet, quite the contrary. If startled, they might just be the fastest enemy around, but quite easy to defeat regardless. Babies, the weakest enemy overall that acts more as a nuisance than an actual threat. It functions the same as in the original game and launches itself at the player whenever they get too close. Fingers, a rarer but still quite common enemy encountered both above and under, are already much tankier than the blind mutant and pose a significant threat on their own. Taking one down is usually best handled with any ranged weapon, as getting close usually ends in a quick demise due to their quick and unpredictable attack patterns. Twins, a larger mutant consisting of 2 merged individuals with the ability to climb walls and ceilings, that has a shit ton of health and devastating chain attacks, while fortunately being rather sluggish. Sluggy is an immobile enemy that resides in the caves and can't really be attacked and vice versa. Its only function is to block out paths leading deeper into the caves, which can only be opened by blowing it up with an explosive. Caterpillar, or John 2.0, is the most dangerous of the bunch. Appearing only above ground, it attacks the player relentlessly, and even though it's gargantuan size, it's able to keep up with a sprinting player and remain relatively silent, resulting in unpleasant surprises. Due to its elongated shape, approaching one in melee combat is near impossible, as its attacks have a huge range. The best way of dealing with them is usually the shotgun, or, if you happen to notice them from afar, explosives also yield a quick and effective result. Demons are the enemies strictly encountered in the game's final cave system, as well as the only one. They are very fast and can swarm and overwhelm a player if not dealt with one by one. Dealing with them in hand-to-hand combat is not advised, due to their attacks being extremely fast. The demon has its boss variation at the very end of the cave, which dwarfs the already sizable mutant and has the ability to jump on the ceiling and pounce on the player. To summarize, I think the game executes this topic very well overall. The designs are easily recognizable and generally horrifying. Nonetheless, what this game absolutely fumbles, in my opinion, has to unfortunately be the environment. First, the grandiose of the island. While it is much bigger, there isn't that much to explore, and in turn, it sometimes just felt like a walking simulator because of how far some of the objectives or quest items were from each other. Secondly, scene building. This is in fact directly caused by the just mentioned size of the map. And while I get it that it's gonna be very hard to put a lot of detail on such a big scale, but when there really is no need for it being so large, apart from some detail to put on the back of the box, just make it smaller. And thirdly, just absolute and utter lifelessness surrounding the player. What I absolutely hated about this game is just how dead it felt. This is supposed to be an ecosystem with animals and plants and whatnot, but instead it's just fucking deer paradise and a rabbit sprinkled here or there. Even the first game surprisingly handled this a lot better, as there were biome-specific animals and just in total more of them. But here, not only we don't get any actual biomes, but instead they opted for a season-divided system, which changes some stuff as time goes on. Which sounded really good on paper, but these are still the same places, still the same rocks and stones, and it's still just the same forest over and over again. But now it has bloody snow. As you can see, even the stuff the game is doing well is immediately overshadowed by the mechanics directly connected to it that made completely no sense regarding the base they were built upon. And because of it, the game feels just like a tangled mess of ideas, which on paper seem to work well. But in practice, these little things, they add up and just completely ruin the overall result we're given. And I know, this is supposed to be an early access, but honestly, just don't release it. And like an old wise man once said, let it goddamn cook.